Memoirs of a Boy Soldier. It is 2 years before the Civil War reaches his small village, and he remembers that war was an entirely unimaginable thing to his young mind. Even the older villagers have trouble understanding what the refugees coming through town have been through. It is too terrible and too unimaginable a concept to equate in their minds. Ishmael and his brother Junior and his friends Toloy and Muhammad have formed rap group amongst themselves 2 years before. They learned of rap music on a trip with their fathers who worked for an American company. Ishmael was hypnotized by the music and struck by the fact that it was black men making it. The slang and fashion in rap culture shaped how he dresses and acts. In early 1993, the boys traveled to the village of Matrujong to perform in a talent show. They stay at a friend's house and are surprised when, early the next day, he returns home from school and informs them that the rebels have invaded Ishmael's village of Mogwemo. The friend tells them that his village will surely be next. Refugees begin coming into town from Mogwemo, but no one can report on the safety of Ishmael's family. Deciding to return to their village to find their families themselves, Ishmael and his friends find that it has been almost entirely destroyed and bodies laying in the streets. Ishmael and his friends return to Matrujong unsuccessful in finding their families and begin to spend their time waiting for word to reach them. In 1998, where Ishmael is having a nightmare about his days as a soldier in Sierra Leone. He carried an AK-47 and attacked a village for their supplies and ammunition. Ishmael and his fellow soldiers opened fire on the villagers, many of whom were young men his own age, and then congratulated each other with high fives and ate the villagers' food. Ishmael tries to calm himself and longs for the return of daylight so that he can go back to living his new life in New York. After the attack on his home village, Ishmael and his friend waited for weeks for news of their families. A man arrived from nearby Sambuya and informs them that it is the site of the most recent attack. The rebels have used a hot bayonet to carve the initials of the Revolutionary United Front into the man's body. He tells the townspeople that the rebels will be coming to Matrujong next, and since they claim to fight for the people, they will be expecting a nice welcome. Soon, the rebels do attack and Ishmael and his friends flee the village. The boys walk for days in complete silence, passing through ransacked villages and body-littered streets. Eventually they get so hungry that they are forced to return to Matrujong for food. They discover that their friend's house has been destroyed, but that the tiny bag of money that Ishmael had to leave behind is still hidden under the bed. In order to get to safety in the rebel-patrolled village, Ishmael and his friends must cross a field covered in dead bodies. During the tense crossing, something falls out of one of the boys' pockets and alerts the guards in a tower nearby. Ishmael has already reached the other side by this time, but must watch as his friends and brother pretend to be dead bodies in the field so that the guards will not see them. Though the boys now have money, they know that all of the nearby village are stashing their food to prepare for the rebel attacks and will not sell to them. they decide to steal some food from a young child that they see eating corn. Ishmael writes that he did not feel remorse because of his desperation. Eventually, not knowing what else to do, the boys return to Matrujong even though they know it is dangerous. They are captured by rebels and forced to join a large gathering of villagers. The rebels torture and taunt an old man, and Ishmael is shocked by this because before the attack no one in the village would think of disrespecting an elder that way. The rebels separate Ishmael and his brother from the others and tell them that their initiation will be a fight to the death. However, as the fight is to begin, gunfire breaks out nearby, distracting the rebels and giving the boys a chance to escape. Ishmael and his friends walk in silence to another village. The nearby villagers fear Ishmael and his friends because they are a group of young boys who could be rebels. They are soon captured by a group of volunteer guards for a village and brought to the village council. The council finds a cassette tape of rap music in Ishmael's pocket, and the foreignness of the music only makes the council more suspicious of them. However, a young boy from Matrujong happens to be taking refuge in the village and tells the council that he remembers Ishmael and his friends from the talent show. The council offers to let the boys stay in the village once he knows that they are not rebels, but they decide to move on as they know the rebels are most likely right behind them. The boys are told that one of their aunts is in a nearby village of Kamata and travel there. They arrive and spend 3 months in the village helping with the planting season before the rebels arrive and destroy the town. Ishmael and Junior are separated in the attack, and Ishmael reveals that he never saw his brother again. Ishmael hides with a nice family for 2 weeks before he decides to set out on his own. He begins walking toward the sea and walks for 5 days without seeing other living people or any intact villages. Ishmael wanders into a tall forest and eats fruit he does not recognize from a tree, not knowing if it is poisonous. He remembers how his grandfather had an unrivaled knowledge of herbal medicines, and Ishmael wishes that he had listened to him more and learned to survive in the woods. Ishmael's loneliness overwhelms him, but he appreciates the sounds of the animals around him. He begins to fear sleeping and his dreams. After a month of living in the forest, Ishmael is forced out by a pack of aggressive boar and returns to the path. By chance, he runs into a group of boys, some of whom happen to be from his school. However, after spending a month on his own, he is uncertain how to act around other people and becomes uncomfortable and worries that so large a group of boys will invite trouble. But his loneliness is so much that he accepts the risk and stays with them anyway. The boys travel together for a few days and scare the villagers that they approach. They are attacked several times, but once the villagers realize that they are merely refugees, they are more understanding. Ishmael's group eventually reaches the ocean and, assuming that the war has not yet reached the coast, expect to settle in a village. However, they find the villages oddly abandoned. In one village, the group is ambushed and tied up before being brought before the chief. The villagers, instead of killing them, steal their shoes and chase them from the village. Ishmael and his group are forced to walk barefoot in 120 degrees temperatures in the sand. At the end of the first day, the boys collapse into a found hut and the man inside feeds them and tends to their injured feet. They ask the man his name, but he tells them it is better if they don't know. Soon, the boys are again tied up and taken before the village chief by the villagers. However, the cassette of rap music saves Ishmael again as the chief hears it and makes Ishmael perform the music. He then realizes that they are just boys and lets them leave in peace. As they continue to travel, each of the boys shares their story of how they came to be there with Ishmael. Each boy lived in a village that was attacked by rebels, and all have horrific stories of slaughter and torture to relate. After hearing the stories, Ishmael realizes why it is that they all so often walk in silence. The group continues to move at night and look for food during the day. They begin sleeping in shifts so that someone is always on guard. As they are walking, a crow falls dead at their feet and they consider this a bad omen. But they are hungry enough that they are compelled to eat the bird. The group tell each other stories as they walk, and Ishmael remembers his name-giving ceremony. One of the boys, Saidu, falls ill and the group takes him to a nearby village to seek aid. When they get there, they are surprised to find that the village is lively and people are acting normally. The people of the village feed them and give them a place to sleep. A woman finds the group and gives them all news of their families. From her, Ishmael learns that Junior has been in that very village recently. He is excited by this and wishes to continue traveling so that he may catch up with his brother. Overnight, Saidu dies and the boys honor his death and bury his body themselves. When they set out on the road the next day, they are renewed in hope for finding their families. Ishmael and his group have been told that some of their families are living in one specific village nearby. However, when they get there, the village is under attack. A banana farmer named Gesimu, whom Ishmael knows, meets them outside the village and they hide and wait for the gunshots to subside. When it falls silent, Ishmael rushes into the village and finds it destroyed. Gesimu shows Ishmael the hut where his family had been staying, and Ishmael is relieved to find that there are no bodies in it. More rebels appear and the boys flee into the forest. When they finally stop running, they all realize that Gesimu has been shot. He dies shortly after. The boys are eventually captured by soldiers and taken to a village occupied by the military called Yel. The village is filled with orphans. They are put to work washing dishes, chopping vegetables and carrying water in the town. Ishmael is relieved to be somewhere safe but begins to suffer from severe headaches and nightmares. A few weeks later, rebels surround the village and the military tell the men and boys that they must join them or leave the village. If the boys leave the village, they will be instantly killed by the rebels, so, feeling that they have no choice, Ishmael and his friends agree to join the military. More than 30 boys between the ages of 7 and 16 joined that day. They are moved into tents by the soldiers' barracks and given guns as well as new clothes and shoes. Ishmael's rap cassette tape is taken and burned. Ishmael is angered and scared and, as his friends feel the same, they offer him no companionship. Soon the boys begin training. They shoot AK-47s and use banana trees as dummies. They discover that the only hope for revenge and justice for their families is to kill the rebels. The boys are given a white tablet that they are told boosts their energy before being sent into the forest to fight for the first time. During this fight, Ishmael kills a man for the first time and 2 of the boys from his group are shot. Ishmael and a corporal strip the dead bodies of their possessions and Ishmael realizes that he feels nothing toward the dead rebels. That night Ishmael's drugs wear off and he has a nightmare. He wakes up terrified and begins shooting his gun inside the tent. The corporal and a lieutenant run in and tend to him, giving him more pills. Ishmael begins to rely on the drugs and additionally smokes marijuana and a mixture of cocaine and gunpowder. This combination causes sleeplessness and he stays up most nights watching violent movies. When the camp runs out of supplies, the soldiers raid the rebel camps and then begin to raid nearby villages, forcing more young boys to join the military. The lieutenant justifies this by saying that they are fighting for the people and the rebels are fighting just to be violent. When he acts violently, Ishmael and the other men cheer. One day the corporal picks a few rebel prisoners out and decides to have a contest. He chooses a few young soldiers, including Ishmael, for a throat-slitting competition. Ishmael wins by using his bayonet to slice a prisoner's throat. He is given the title of junior lieutenant. Ishmael spends years with the soldiers and comes to see them as his family. In January of 1996, shortly after Ishmael turns 15 years old, UNICEF men show up to take the boy soldiers away. The boys are lined up and the men choose the youngest ones to be released from duty. They are told that they will be put in school and given new lives. The lieutenant tells the boys that they have served their country and their people well but gives no other explanation. The boys are taken to a compound in Sierra Leone's capital and given food and beds. They are astonished by the change and don't know how to act. The boys begin fighting with other boy soldiers and a group of youth soldiers that are brought in. MPs have to break up the battle by force, but by that time 6 people have been shot. Ishmael and the other boys are taken to a rehabilitation center called Benin Home and Ishmael begins to become ill from the drug withdrawal. The boys behave poorly at first in the rehab center. Fighting, looting and breaking into the medical supplies in search of drugs are common. Eventually, though, the staff begins to win the boys over and the boys begin to calm down. At this point, their trauma begins to fully unveil itself. Ishmael realizes that he can barely remember anything from his childhood before he was a soldier. After the violent outbursts, the boys are reminded that it is not their fault and all broken things are replaced without fuss. The boys attend a few hours of school each day and become frustrated by how far behind they are. Ishmael recalls one battle in which he and another soldier slaughtered an entire village. Ishmael was given the nickname Green Snake afterward for his success because he was so adept at hiding in the bushes and being sneaky. Ishmael's nurse, Esther, buys him some rap cassettes and a Walkman, and this causes him to open up about his past to her. Soon, some observers from UNICEF and the UN arrive to view the center, and the boys decide to put on a talent show for them. Ishmael performs a rap and recites a monologue from Shakespeare. The doctors are so impressed by his performance that they ask him to become the spokesperson for the center. Ishmael says that he feels that children are strong enough to be rehabilitated from war's horrors if they are given patience and time. Ishmael's caseworker finds an uncle that he has never met named Tommy. Uncle Tommy visits the center and promises to take Ishmael in and take care of him. Ishmael is won over by his sincerity and feeling. Ishmael says goodbye to his friends in the center, and Tommy takes Ishmael to his family and begins telling him more about his father. Ishmael has a difficult time adjusting to a peaceful, happy life and finds himself withdrawing a lot. Ishmael meets a girl in the new village and the two date for a short time before she begins to push him to talk about his past. Ishmael ends the relationship and later ends others the same way, seeming content to be alone. Ishmael's caseworker visits him and tells him that there is a group of children from the home who are going to visit the UN in New York City and tell their stories. She wants Ishmael to apply to be in the group. Ishmael applies, and soon he is invited to visit the United States and given a passport and a visa. When Ishmael reaches New York, he finds it cold but fascinating. He is shocked by how different the city is from what he has heard in his rap music. At the UN, he meets other boys who are there to tell their stories and realizes that he is not the only young man whose childhood was stolen by the war. One of the organizers, Laura Sims, bonds with Ishmael as she invites the children to tell their stories. Soon, Ishmael is sent back to his home at Uncle Tommy's and begins the school year. The news of his past as a soldier has reached the other students in the school, and they refuse to sit near him or talk to him, fearing that he will hurt them. In May of 1997, gunfire breaks out in the capital, and Ishmael fears that the civil war is returning and doubts that he will make it through again. By that night, the government has been overthrown by a collaboration of the RUF and the military and begin controlling the city. Ishmael fears that he has escaped the war and the war has returned for him. Uncle Tommy soon falls ill, and, as there are no hospitals available with the rebel control of the city, he soon dies. Ishmael realizes that he must escape the city before he is made a soldier again. He calls Laura Sims and asks her if he can live with her in New York. She agrees, and Ishmael flees the country illegally and goes to the Sierra Leone embassy in Guinea. There he is given shelter as a war refugee and soon given passage to New York.